Hey guys, welcome to Indian Digital Nomads. We have with us Vladan over here. Vladan is a co founder of Syntropy and he's working on this project to make democracy more decentralized with the help of liquid democracy. Today, we're going to be talking about how digital nomad lifestyle is really changing the way we work. So, Vladan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And it is very nice to be in India again after 5 years.
Great, awesome. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying over here. So let's get started with discussing how do you think that digital nomad lifestyle is changing what it means to work and how blockchain is helping people become polyworker. What's your take on that?
So, for the start, I can say that being, let's say, like a digital nomad is not completely new in history because even, let's say, before internet, so now if you go back to the 1970s, 1980s, there were still some people around the world that were able to be more mobile and to work in different places. I mean, you could be, let's say, as a journalist, working in different countries, or you could maybe be like this kind of a hippie person, traveling to, for example, South America and then picking fruits or maybe growing something or repairing something. So in one way, kind of being a nomad, let's say, is kind of nothing new at that. The new thing is that I would say, if you now speak about digital nomadity, is that different types of technologies simply make it easier for more people to do things that were more reserved for a smaller number of people, let's say 30, 40 years ago. It's a little bit like with traveling. So now I usually say to people like this that even, let's say, 400 years ago, you could travel around like in Europe or even globally. For example, if you were a nobleman, if you had enough money, if you have like a government support, you could make this kind of like a gap year, to study, to learn things. You could travel. But most people that time, like it's 300 years ago, they were born, lived, and died like in the same region or even the same city or same village. And now more people globally can do the same things that were kind of reserved to, let's say, certain elites or like certain like more higher up positions in the past. So when it comes to digital nomads, my experience is that um, it's very much connected to cryptocurrency. It's very much connected to creative work, like with regarding content creation of different types. So this means, for example, that you can. It's also kind of this kind of a global north, global south interactions. So because many individuals I know, they are, let's say, from the what's called the global north, like European Union, America, like North America, Canada. They are from, let's say, what's considered richer parts of the world, and then they go, let's say, for example, to India or Sri Lanka or Thailand or Cambodia, where kind of things are in general cheaper for them. So it's like, food prices are cheaper compared to Europe. Rental prices are cheaper compared, let's say, to America. So this means that in that way, now if you have this kind of work where you're not depending on a physical office, you're mobile. Why not go to a place that's warmer? The food is different, or you think the food is better compared to your, where you were born, where you were raised up, and also that it's about kind of meeting people. So you go, let's say, now to Bali or Sri Lanka, and then you meet other digital nomads. You feel that you have something in common, regardless where you were born on the planet. So what happens basically with technology, it makes it easier for more people to cooperate. It makes it easier for you to be what's called, the free agent. Now, being a free agent is nothing new. Like already, let's say in the 90s, as internet kind of started developing itself, like in the United States, you suddenly had people like in Silicon Valley saying, "Look, I'm not going to work for one company. I'm going to sit at home, use internet, use a browser, and I'm going to do work for, let's say, three companies or four or six companies during the same week." So you're doing, during one week, you're working for different employers, and you do things that are, more passionate for you. And this is, I would say, one of the best things with digital, nomadity, is that it's kind of enabling more people to do the kind of work they really care of, they really like. It's not like that you are forced to do a job you don't like, but you do something that's more like your hobby. And this is the best thing.
Right. So how do you think that the blockchain is helping people become polyworker? Like how it is facilitating the whole this polywork lifestyle?
So basically, because of blockchain, it means that because blockchain, if you say, operates a little bit like a decentralized database or like a distributed ledger, like a digital ledger. So it means now that if you are now, let's say, a digital nomad or like a tech hipster or social entrepreneur or similar, so you can be part of one, two, or several communities, and you get offers from all of them. Hey, could you write this article, or could you make this slide? Could you make this presentation? Could you be involved in this project? You know, because blockchain is about, very much about cryptocurrencies. So you can now, let's say, be part of three, four, several cryptocurrency communities, and you can do work for all of them, like during 1 week or during 1 month without any, let's say, bigger problem, as long as you can organize yourself on your personal level. So this is, I would say, the pretty much the main thing. Or it can be the case that you are a blockchain developer, that you're more, let's say, technically skilled, and then you can work to different larger companies. So let's say you can be now in Bali or Cambodia or Vietnam, and then, for example, IBM or some other larger company contacts you and asks you, hey, could you help us with our blockchain system? Could you do some work for us? So this is really the case. It's kind of partly working with blockchain on its own, but it's also like using blockchain for different types of activities, different types of work, or how to say, some kind of a content making or project work that usually is very much kind of about crypto, but it can be about other stuff as well. It can be about, let's say, making certain type of videos, or just writing certain type of articles, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that how our definition of work is changing now. Like earlier, it used to be about work used to be about material production, but now it's about identity creation as well. So a lot of people they do certain work because they want to have access to certain community or they want a certain identity for themselves, right? So as you rightly said, that blockchain helps people be in certain gated communities or be associated with multiple identities at the same time, right? So I would love to hear about why do you think that we are choosing identities over identity? Like growing up in 90s, we saw that most of us had a very unique or one identity, but comparing to now, most of the folks who are in blockchain they have multiple identities at the same time. They have multiple names. They are choosing anonymity over a single identity. So why do you think we are getting there?
Oh, I think that we could even make whole podcast, like 1 hour podcast episode, only focusing about those aspects, because it's very, in one way, it's a very theoretical debate. It's academic debate. It's about research regarding identification. It's part of this, kind of modernism versus postmodernism versus metamodernism discussion about like how humans are creating identifications, how humans are, creating different institutions and so on. But regarding your question in general, I would say like this: that let's say now in this kind of a more industrial society, historically seen. So let's say now you work in the same factory for 40 years. So your identity as let's say as a worker, as a laborer, as a working class, as a factory person, it's basically with you for a large part of your life. It's not, it can change, but it's but you're still kind of, a worker very strongly. While let's say if you're a digital nomad, you are meeting people born in different places around the world. You're working with different projects, with different ideas. You're constantly stimulated by different communities. So blockchain is about decentralization. If you now speak about more individuals can cooperate without middleman institutions like banks and governments. And this means also that decentralization is very much about pluralism and diversity, that you as an individual, you can now, you can work for different employers, different companies at the same time. You can cooperate with a larger number of people at the same time. And means that you have to simply identify yourself with uh, a larger number of stories, because we do have our let's say more biological identifications, like being a male or female or third gender and so on. But most of our identifications are very social. They're socially constructed. For example, if you're a Christian or Muslim or humanist, and also if you have some nationality, if you're, let's say, Indian or Canadian or Bolivian. So, and kind of if you're a digital nomad, you have to be also kind of a, let's say, global citizen, because you are working, we are cooperating with people around the world. You are working with things that are global, like cryptocurrencies, transactions, larger, maybe larger companies, smaller companies that are selling some product, that are, selling some product in Asia and Europe and Africa and so on. And also that you're in touch with different languages. You're constantly in touch with different, let's say, uh, project proposals based on, it can be based about environment and climate change. It can be about finance, decentralized finance, DeFi. It can be about food production. So these are the things that humans that can connect more humans, that are part of our everyday life. So this is why kind of caring about identities or stories becomes much more important than only feeling that you have one strong particular identity or one particular story. Most of digital nomads I know, they are they all have, let's say, some passport. They all have some kind of a nationality, and they all feel. I would say that they can feel very patriotic about nations, let's say communities where they were born, like America or Germany, or even, let's say, like, for example, Sri Lanka. But at the same time, they can identify themselves more as kind of planetary people, and they're usually searching for what it's called, referred to more kind of post-material values, that you identify yourselves with the nature, with the climate, that you identify yourself with, let's say, more as a planet as a whole, so to say.
Great, awesome. One of the thing I noticed while traveling in around the world in the last 12, 13 years is that nomads, one of the freedom nomads really seek is the freedom from their identity. Like a lot of nomads, when they go to a new place where no one knows them, they can choose their own identity in the offline world. They can be whoever they want to be. When we are living in a certain location, we carry the identity that is kind of, you can say, sometimes imposed on us, or a single identity that we grow up with in that particular place. But yeah, nomads are very excited about going to a different place and being whoever they want to be. And now this with the web3, it's possible even in the online world. They can have multiple identities in the online world as well. And I guess that's what many digital nomads are excited about. So yeah, that's really interesting, and I can totally see that how we are moving from having a single identity to multiple identities. And it's like maybe right now few folks who understands blockchain, they are in there, but most likely we'll be living in a world where it will be normal to have all of us to have multiple
Yeah.
identities. How much time do you think it will take us to normalize having multiple identities?
Well, the thing is that there is one thing that all of us humans, in principle, have in common, especially when we are, let's say, in older age, when we are, let's say, older than, when we're, let's say, 15 plus or 18 plus. And one thing we really have in common is that none of us is consisting of a single, only one identity or only one story. We do believe in different stories, and we can also be very inconsistent or contradictory in how we identify ourselves. For example, we can say that we like the freedom of religion, but then we can also be negative, or think that freedom of religion should not be applied to a certain religion for certain reasons. Or, for example, we can say that yeah, we care about the climate and ecology, but at the same time we are not kind of really willing to change our lifestyle more radically. So we have this ability to be multi, to be pluralistic, or to be, let's say, liquid. The only thing is that I would say the main difference is more like how you are operating on your more personal, let's say, psychological level. because as I mentioned, none of us, let's say in principle, is consisting of only one story. But at the same time, some people will feel that certain stories, let's say certain nationality, is very important for them. That they will, you know, basically that's kind of the most one of the most important things in the world for them. And other people can be more balanced, or they can be more, let's say, diversified. They can, is in the case of, like, being a digital nomad, you can be an American, or let's say you can be a Bolivian, or you can be Indian. At the same time, you can, see yourself as a global citizen. Or you can also, when you move somewhere to some local place, to some city like Berlin or Colombo or Bangkok, you can also identify yourself, with the local environment. You can start interacting with people that are cooperating. So I would say like this, that it's not a matter of if we are able to be multi or not. It's more like if we are able to really practice that in our real life, that we are not, being reduced by certain emotions, that we don't become, it's very easy for humans to become very hysterical, to become very extreme, to become very kind of, narrow-minded, ignorant in certain situations, like in the case of war, or if you feel that, somebody's attacking you, if you feel that somebody's, oppressing you, then people can become very, how to say, they can become very, primitive in their behaviors. But I would say like this, on a more theoretical level, that there is a process of, let's say, human unification. There's a process of that one day our planet could operate as a, some kind of a, like, united world planet or a world federation. Well, maybe not, let's say, like Star Trek, or as in Star Force in with Republic, but that it's gonna take time, until more people identify themselves with stories that can simply unify more humans. For example, now if we speak about climate change, it's really something that's uniting us almost all over the world. There are some exemptions, like for example North Korea, because it's very, blocked and isolated. But otherwise, I cannot really say the amount of time, if it's like 30 years, 50 years, 80 years. I can only say that there is this kind of process, and that nation states are not like some final phase in, let's say, human history. It's not like a final step. So we are able to create something larger. We are able to organize ourselves in larger units. And I also think that as more people are, let's say, members of communities, like virtual communities, digital communities, decentralized communities, like crypto communities that are operating blockchain, if more people are, part of this process, if more people are part of different communities and circles, it also means that more people are going to be able to cooperate with each other globally, and to identify themselves with, let's say, more with the global level, and developments that are, between continents, between world regions, and so on.
Mhm. Absolutely. All right. I'd also like to discuss with you about how industrial revolution led to the birth of the working class, and now how with the tech advancement, digital nomad life, and blockchain, we are seeing the rise of the creative class. So, what, according to you, is making us uh, strive for creative freedom? Why do you think that more and more people are looking to be part of the creative class versus the working class?
Well, so here's the thing. I'm also a historian in my basics, let's say, and I grew up myself in. So I was born in former Yugoslavia, in northern Bosnia, in a town that was basically constructed, during the industrialization process at the end of the 19th century. So the idea was, okay, here's going to be chemical industry, let's say like wood industry, and then people are going to move here from all over the empire. At that time, it was still a Austro-Hungarian empire, and they will work there and so on in these factories, and they will live there. So then you have like the middle class, like engineers and similar. Then you have the working class, factory workers. And when I was younger, I moved to Sweden as a teenager. Now, what I learned from reading about Swedish history is that, so Sweden is one of the parts of Europe, you can say, really had this, the real transformation from, let's say, agricultural society to industrial one. a little bit like United Kingdom or Germany and so like some very kind of very similar history. And you can say that the working class, how to say, there were workers before there was an idea of a working class. For example, let's say in Stockholm, in the capital of Sweden, just in and in other parts of Europe or globally, you still had people who were working like in manufactories, like in 18th or 17th or 19th, beginning of 19th century. You still had people who were, let's say, doing particular kind of jobs that we today connect, to, let's say, physical work. The only difference, let's say, if you now compare, let's say, larger part of the 19th century with larger part of the 20th century, is that this idea, this construction, this kind of awareness, that certain people are working class, it didn't exist until certain philosophers like Karl Marx or let's say Robert Owen started developing this as a social construct, as a simply as an idea, and basically, let's say the development of the working class was partly a technological aspect, like urbanization, people moving from the countryside to the cities in order to work in factories, and the technological process of machines and industrialization. But it was also very much mainly, I would say, social aspect. The idea that people should simply identify themselves as workers. Now, what I see is a similar development. If you now speak about creatives, there is a writer, or let's say, I think he's a researcher called Richard Florida. He wrote this book already, I think, 10 years ago, about the creative class people, including, let's say, mentioning digital nomads and media workers and designers and so on. So I would say that creative class is also nothing new, because creative people, individuals, have existed during history. Like already, let's say 500 years ago, you could find individuals that are very creative in a certain sense, like innovators or designers or so on. But now the difference is that this kind of awareness of the creative class is being promoted in certain kind types of research. In It's also being promoted, let's say, for example, if you now speak about this kind of a meta modern narrative. So there are, let's say, meta modern writers who are speaking about rise of the creative class, like hipsters, hackers, and hippies, the triple H. So there is this kind of construct now, awareness being created by different individuals. So I would say that if you now speak about much more post-industrial development during the last 30 years, so this means partly that you have robotization, you have automatization, or sorry, automation. You have a process where, for example, a car factory doesn't need 3,000 workers. Now they can operate with 200 workers. So there, you have this process mainly like in the global north, like Europe and North America, but also in China at the moment, where the number of people who you could categorize as working class is simply being reduced, simply decreasing. And then you have the number of people who you could categorize as a creative class, like um, app developers, content creators, uh, crypto traders, and so on, is on the rise. And I think this is in one way, it's a kind of understandable change historically seen, because industrial society is also not some final step in human development. And the future is considered to be more post-industrial, sustainable, climate-friendly, ecological, post-carbon, and so on. And it means simply that more people are gonna, let's say, be in this kind of a creative sector in the following, let's say, 20, 30 years.
Mhm. All right, great, awesome. So, Vladan, to wrap up our podcast, would love to hear your opinion on the ideas of the global citizenship. What do you think it will take for world to have a global citizenship for all of us?
Yeah, so here is the thing. One of the reasons I'm really working on, like, I'm interested in ideas of global citizenship. So I'm reading research papers, I'm reading more philosophical books, I'm trying to write about it myself. It's partly connected to my own history, because I grew up during the war, in what's called the Yugoslav wars. I grew up during the war and after the war in Bosnia. And for me, this kind of sense of belonging or identifying myself with something bigger, with something more, what I see as something more civilized and that can connect more people. It's really part of me because I grew up in something that was kind of the opposite to the idea of global citizenship and united planet and a more interconnected world. I grew up in an environment which was more about isolation and belief in some kind of kind of completely sovereign nation, completely, let's say, kind of independent, from the rest of the world. Um, so here's the thing: if you look like on the history of ideas of global citizenship, it's very much based on ideas that there should be one global citizenship. So there should be like a world passport that you have in a physical form. There should be some kind of world government service issuing people with global citizenship. So you have like an ID card and you have a symbol of planet Earth on that, or let's say that you have global elections like for a world parliament. So the thing is, now if we speak about blockchain decentralization, is I actually started to change my mind because I think that there is no need to have, let's say, only one global citizenship in the future. I think that most of us are instead going to have global citizenships, in plurality. So now we are coming back to pluralism and diversity. And why I think this is because I noticed that from my own experience, if you're a member of different, let's say, crypto communities, if you're a member of different networks, you can actually experience global, being a global citizen, being how to say cosmopolitan, from different perspectives, from different activities, from different frameworks. So, for example, I'm a member of a community called Seeds, which is idea is like to use crypto for climate transformation, for climate and ecological projects, for permaculture and sustainable regenerative food production. And I'm actually a citizen of the Seeds community. See, this already provides me with a sense of being a global citizen because the Seeds community itself is global. And I'm also a member of some other communities, and then there's a kind of a similar framework there. So this means basically that you can now be member of 10 communities, let's say, focusing on different policy areas and different problems and challenges like climate or energy or migration or uh, economy and or machine learning, and you can have this feeling that you're a global citizen in all of them at the same time, and be involved in different processes, but that still are, let's say, kind of interconnected. So I would say that decentralization is kind of also reshaping ideas of global citizenship simply by saying that there is no need to only have one global citizenship when you can have many of them at the same time. And you can cooperate with many individuals around the world without, let's say, that you need to cooperate via government or maybe some large institution like a bank or like a big private company. Actually, I told this in one podcast in Sweden about migration and refugees and asylum seekers. So they were asking me about how blockchain and decentralization can be applied. And I told them, well, imagine a world that if you're now seeking for asylum or seeking for a refugee, you go to another country, but you're not going there as a complete stranger because you already have members from your community, let's say Seeds, that are living there. And you can ask them for help. You can cooperate with them directly. So this would be, a win-win situation because then people can find help um, in different parts of the world, depending on the situation, so to say.
Absolutely. It's very fascinating that now we are living in a world where the communities that you are a member of has more significance than the place where you were born or the place where you are geographically parked, right?
Mhm.
So probably our concepts of nation state is also changing, and how now we assign more values to the communities that we are part of, online and offline, than the nation we belong to or the citizenship that we have. So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing all the insights and lots of food for thought as well, Vladan. We really appreciate you coming on our podcast and sharing your thoughts. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.